My name is Mr. Porter. Fantastic. How are you all today? I am doing very well. I think most of all, I'm very excited to meet you all, especially since we'll be working together throughout this year. One thing to note that if you ever have any questions for me or have any concerns, please feel free to reach out to me via text or via email. So today, we're going to take a moment to look over some data for Blake and talk about where we are going to target some of the needs that are shown by the data that's listed here on the screen. So do you have any questions before we get started? Wonderful. So yes, as I was saying, we're going to look at some data, and that is what you should see on your screen. This is the star reading data. This is the benchmark that we use here at EPIC to determine whether students have made growth or not. As we can see that on his most recent test, Blake scored right here in the yellow, which is a basic, and we would like for Blake to get up to proficient or better. So let's go ahead and scroll down. And this test identifies some of the areas in which would be good to target for Blake as far as instruction. One thing that I'd like to point out is there's one here that says read regularly and independently, and I would suggest doing that every day, preferably between grade levels of 3.1 and 4.8 for the optimal growth. So as far as what I would like to target next week with Blake is two different standards. The first one would be use context clues to define academic words. And the second that I would like to target is summarize a story, drama, or narrative poem. However, my emphasis will be on summarizing a story. Do we have any questions? Fantastic. Then I'm going to switch over and share another screen, and this will be an overview of my lesson plan. It is brief, but if you have any questions, again, like I said, please let me know. So on Monday, we'll begin with introducing context clues, and I will begin to try to activate some of Blake's prior knowledge and what he already knows about context clues. From there, we will begin to work on a passage, a context clues worksheet, and we will work on that together. At the end of the day, I'll ask Blake what he has learned and what is a context clue. On Tuesday, I will begin with an entry ticket, which is to assess what Blake remembers from the day before. We will then recap previous day's lesson and then draw attention once again to the daily objective because we want to make sure that we stay focused on what our main goal is. So then we will work on the next worksheet. Each day the worksheets will begin to increase in rigor, which means they'll become a little bit more difficult each day. And then I'll talk briefly at the very end of this lesson about tomorrow's in-person meeting. So on Wednesday is the in-person meeting, and this is where I will begin to target. I can summarize a short story. So quickly, we will start with a greeting and talk about the day's objectives. I'll ask Blake what he knows about summarizing, and then I'll begin to provide instruction about summarizing, what makes a good summary, and the key components. We will then work on a passage together and write a summary for that passage. Then I will have Blake read a second passage, and then he will do his best work to write his own summary. Again, I'll be there to help him all along the way. If we need further instruction on that later, then I will build that into a plan. However, on Thursday and Friday, we will return to virtual instruction. On both Thursday and Friday, we will start with a reading passage, looking for meanings of different words identified in there using context clues in a passage. This is a little bit more difficult. So on Thursday, I will work with Blake on identifying some of those key words that might help us identify what each word means. On Friday will be our assessment day. This day, we will talk again about our objective. We will talk about using context clues, and we'll work together for a little bit on a passage. From there, Blake will then have two different assessments. His first one will be a more basic one, in just short sentences, identifying a word in those sentences and what it means. The second assessment will be in a passage. My objective by having these two different passages is to identify if Blake fully understands the concept, and if not, that we can find within this context exactly where he is at. Hopefully we'll be finished here. If not, we will continue next week and build on what we have learned this week. Do we have any questions? Fantastic. Then that has us wrapped up here with this part. Like I said, if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to me. It has been a pleasure meeting you all.